Kurapika is a Conjurer, a Nen user that can create objects out of thin air, according to his imagination. But he becomes a specialist when his eyes turn scarlet. Now his first ability is the Dowsing Chain. It's a chain ending with a small, ball-shaped weight, and he uses it for both offensive and defensive purposes. Its main function is a medium for pendulum dowsing, with the ball moving in accordance with Kurapika's dowsing objective at a given time. So it can be used to determine the location of missing individuals, and to determine the veracity of someone's statements, i.e. if someone's lying or not. Now, usually he's got to be right in front of the target for this to work. However, when Emperor Time is active, he can also use the ability through video recordings. The next ability is Chain Jail. It's an extremely durable chain with a hook for an end piece, whose sole purpose is to capture spiders and strip them of their freedom. Now it forces the captive into a state of Zetsu, shutting off their aura and preventing them from using Nen abilities. Now technically, it is possible to break out of chain jail with brute force alone, but not even Uvo was able to accomplish this feat. So it's quite strong and durable. However, he imposed a limitation that it can only be used on the members of the Phantom Troop, and if he ever violates this rule, it results in his death. His next ability is Emperor Time, which is a specialization type. Now when his eyes turn red, he changes from a Conjurer to a Specialist. Now this allows him to use all types of Nen to 100% efficiency. However, the price to pay is considerable for this one, as every second spent in the mode shortens Kurapika's life by 1 hour. Next up we got another Conjuration, and that's Holy Chain. Now this chain cures wounds by drawing from enhancement type Nen. And when he's in his specialist state, the chain can heal serious injuries, such as a fractured arm within seconds. Then we got Judgment Chain, i.e. the Stake of Retribution. This chain enters a victim's body and wraps around their heart. Kurapika then declares a binding rule that, if violated by the victim, results in the Stake of the Retribution piercing their heart and killing them. At the same time, he has a blade around his heart as well. Now he's capable of issuing at least 2 commands per Stake of Retribution. However, because Kurapika does not have mastery over emission and manipulation, Judgment Chain can only be used in conjunction with Emperor's Time. We then got Steel Chain. Now the end piece of this looks like a syringe, and upon piercing a target's body, it drains their aura and steals one of their Nen abilities. Now while the aura is being drained from the subject's body, the target is forced into a state of Zetsu. And obviously, once the ability is stolen from them, they're no longer able to use it anymore. And then finally we got Stealth Dolphin. Now by using Emperor's Time, Kurapika can summon a dolphin-like Nen beast with a syringe on each pectoral fin. This construct can equip and analyze the stolen ability that he used with his previous Nen ability, informing him of the Nen's name, functions, and conditions. And by doing this, he can effectively use the ability for himself. Or he can even loan it to another person. I mean, in case it's not obvious, Kurapika has a ton of abilities. I mean, the guy is just absolutely broken. Now, if Kurapika equips the dolphin with a stolen ability and transfers it to someone else, he can use Steel Chain again, but transferring it does not allow him to exit Emperor's Time. Now, regardless of who controls the stolen ability, it can only be used once, after which it's returned to the original user. And as a downside, as long as all stolen abilities are not returned, Emperor's Time will remain active, which means that the longer that he holds on to these stolen abilities, the more time he loses off of his life. Kite is a Conjurer with dual affinity towards transmutation, and he was taught Nen by none other than Jing Freaks. Now his Nen ability is called Crazy Slots, and it allows him to conjure some weapons with a Nen Beast clown affixed to it. Now it's a roulette system with the clown's tongue numbering from 1 to 9. Each number corresponds to a specific weapon, so he has no control over what he's gonna get. Now the weapon drawn will not disappear until it's used. Now only 3 of the weapons were actually shown in the manga: the scythe, the carbine, and the mace. And according to Jing, the Crazy Slot ability has a number that only comes up when Kite desperately does not want to die. Its power is so great that Kite managed to reincarnate himself as the Queen's daughter after his death. Shizuku is the number 8 spider in the Phantom Troop. Her Nen ability gives her the power to materialize a vacuum cleaner, named Blinky, and it sucks up everything except living things and objects made of Nen. It can inhale an infinite number of non-living objects. Now only the last object to be vacuumed can be regurgitated. As to what happens to everything else, well, we're not really sure. Not even Shizuku knows about that. Now her ability is rather useful to the Phantom Troop, since it allows them to clean up all the evidence of crime scenes, including blood and corpses. She can also use it to remove foreign materials like poisons and gases. She can even use it to suck out all the blood from her victims, so it's a very powerful item. Kortapi is the number 12 member of the Phantom Troop. Now when Kortapi touches an object with his left hand, he can conjure an exact replica of the object with his right hand. Now he cannot replicate living things, except as inanimate objects, essentially meaning that they would show up as corpses. Now the replicas that he creates vanish after 24 hours, regardless of their size. Interesting little side note, before their disappearance, Kortapi was able to track the movements and position of each object. All he had to do was touch the original and he would know exactly where it was. Genthru gives his aura explosive properties, creating small yet deadly detonations in his palms. Now, he can use this for offensive measures against someone's face, or he could use it for defensive measures as well. It effectively serves as a deterrent to keep other players away from him. That being said, it comes with a drawback. He needs to use some of his aura as a shield to make sure that it doesn't affect his hands. And then he has Countdown. He can attach a bomb to a victim by following 2 conditions. He must touch the target while saying the word bomber, and explain both of his abilities in full. If he fulfills this, the bomb is then conjured inside the victim's body. Timers are linked to the victim's pulses, counting down faster if the heart rate is elevated. Knuckle is a beast hunter and Morel's apprentice. His Nen ability is called Hakaware. It's an indestructible Nen beast called Amortizing Power Redirector, or APR. Now as long as APR is attached to someone, any attack done to Knuckle by his opponent returns aura to him, which essentially lowers the counter on APR. And until all the aura lent by Knuckles return to him, he cannot be physically damaged by his opponent. Now the reverse is also true. Each one of Knuckles' blows only lends more aura to his opponent, causing no damage. Now the interest rate on APR is 10% of the borrowed aura, accruing over every 10 seconds. As the amount of aura grows, APR begins to grow as well. And if APR exceeds that person's total remaining aura, then they go bankrupt and they enter a state of Zetsu. Not only that, but they can no longer use Nen for a period of 30 days. Knuckle can use Hakaware on multiple opponents at once, as well as track their general location at all times regardless of the distance. However, for the interest to accumulate, he has to be within 50 meters. Abingane's ability allows him to remove the effects of Nen from himself or others, thus qualifying him as an exorcist. Now he builds a campfire, and he takes a wooden effigy and chants a prayer. He then takes branches of leaves, weaves a netted decoration around the doll, and burns it into the fire. Now the campfire rages on, amassing the aura of the flora and the fauna of the forest, allowing Abingane to conjure a Nen beast. And through this Nen beast, he's able to exercise the Nen curse by devouring them. Unfortunately, he's unable to lift Nen abilities left by the dead. Bono is the 10th member of the Phantom Troop. Now he can play music through the holes in his body during battle. And with different songs, he creates different effects, such as the transformation of his own body or the conjuration of objects. Now 2 different abilities have been shown through this, Prologue and Jupiter. Prologue allows him to conjure a warrior attire as well as a spear, and Jupiter allows him to conjure a giant sphere with the appearance of the planet of Jupiter, and he can use this sphere to crush his enemies. Now if the opponent is within earshot of Bono's music, they're basically screwed, because the sphere is going to keep chasing them at tremendous speed. It's basically a death sentence. Now Welfin's Nen ability is called Missile Man. He conjures an organic-looking missile launcher on his back, with a shrunken head and 4 alien limbs, and each limb is holding a missile. Now, the ability has 3 steps. He's got to establish a target, said missile is loaded with a question or order, and if the target lies or defies the order, the attack begins. Now, if all steps are executed correctly, the missiles continuously chase the target until they hit. And it doesn't even matter if Welfin can sense or know where the target is, the missile's gonna hit. Now, even though it sounds pretty cool, it's got a pretty long setup, and it's pretty difficult to use if you're trying to be stealthy. I mean, you got to identify the target and ask them a question, so I mean, they're gonna know it's coming. In fact, even Welfin looked down upon his own ability. Now, once the missiles explode, they implant black centipedes into the target. And the centipedes grow by feeding on the target's defiance, inflicting excruciating pain. And they can even kill the target as well. However, if Welfin ever feels defeat or sincerity for his opponent, it actually harms the centipedes and can destroy them. So in some aspects, it's a pretty cool ability, but it's a double-edged sword. Basho's ability is called Great Haiku. It activates when he writes a haiku on a strip of paper. Now, according to him, whatever is written on it becomes real. However, the potency of the effect depends on the quality of the poem. Now, on both occasions that we saw his ability, he was able to summon flames. Chi-Tu's Nen ability is called Tag. He activates the ability by making physical contact with the target, at which point they're both enclosed in an artificial Nen space, resembling a savanna. Now, the space is isolated from the real world by a dome. Now, for the victim to leave, he must touch Chi-Tu before the time limit of 8 hours is expired. The consequences of this are never revealed, as he ended up losing his only game of tag. His next one is Conjured Crossbow and Claws. He conjures a miniature crossbow that attaches to his arm, and it's got some Wolverine-styled claws on top of that. Unfortunately, the crossbow is actually slower than Chi-Tu, so it's a bit redundant. It's actually useless. Henrig's Nen ability is called Biohazard. Now, he can turn any device or object that he touches into a living creature. Not only that, the device or weapon can retain its original function and can be manipulated to his will. Just like he turned some guns into snakes and ended up using them to shoot the guards. Now, among the animals that he can conjure, there are snakes, pigeons, cats, and even oysters. Subone's Nen ability is called Rider's High, and it allows her to morph into a various cavalcade of vehicles. The vehicle then uses the aura of her rider as a propellant, meaning that she cannot use the ability without a rider. Now, presumably, she can transform into a number of vehicles, but the two that we saw in the anime were the motorcycle and a glider. Now, Meruem is an emitter. He was born with the ability to use Nen. In fact, he vastly surpasses any known human. One of his abilities is called Aura Synthesis. Essentially, his aura grows every time he devours a Nen user. Not only that, but he can assimilate Nen abilities. Case in point, when he siphoned off the life essence of Yopi and Poof, he also attained their abilities. The next one is Metamorphosis. So after he absorbed a big portion of Poof and Yopi, he transformed his body by growing a pair of wings. He also has his Rage Blast, which allows him to fire explosive blast of aura from his arm. And then finally we have the Photon. Now this is a combination of emission, transmutation, and manipulation. He can turn his aura into microscopic particles akin to photons, and he can deploy them with his N in a flash, or detach the photons from his body and spread them into the surrounding air. It allows him to scan an entire room and know everything about it. The shape, the quality, the emotions of the people inside. Heck, he could basically read people's thoughts. It also seems like he might be able to teleport with it as well. Leorio has the Remote Punch. After striking an object in his vicinity, he emits his aura in a line that travels along a surface from the point of impact to a desired location. It basically creates a wormhole in which it generates his fist on the other end, and he uses to punch Jing in the face during the 13th Hunter Chairman election arc. Although, it seems like Leorio devised this ability to be used in medicine instead, probably in surgery. Now, Melody is an emitter, but she also has a dual affinity towards manipulation. Her Nen ability is Enchanting Music. By channeling her aura into music, Melody can play songs with various effects, including alleviating fatigue and curing illness. Now, when she pours her heart into a performance, she can enchant all the listeners to the point that they become completely oblivious to anything that's happening around them. And this can go on for a duration of 3 minutes. What's more, this enchanting effect can work on hundreds, maybe even thousands of people all at the same time. Silva is an emitter who can emit his aura into 2 large orbs of frightening power. He basically creates a sphere on each hand and hurls them at the target. I mean, he's basically the Dragon Ball Z character of the HunterxHunter universe. Now, Zeno is a very skilled Nen user. With his Aura Blast, he can fire a blast of aura from the palm of his hand. A very simple technique, but effective as well. He then has his Dragon Head. He can transmutate his aura into a tangible extension of his body and use it to form the head of a dragon. Now, he uses this in conjunction with emission, allowing him to shoot the dragon as a projectile or use it as a means for transportation. Now, the dragon head can be used in a multitude of ways, 2 of which are the Dragon Lance and the Dragon Dive. The Dragon Dive was used against the Chimera Ants. Essentially, Zeno shatters the head of the dragon into hundreds of smaller aura dragons that rain down upon his opponent. Nav has 2 abilities, Hide and Seek and Scream. Now by touching a flat surface, like a wall or the ground, and drawing symbols in a circle, Nav can set and open a portal leading to an artificial Nen dimension. It's a 4-dimensional mansion containing 21 rooms of varying sizes and shapes, and each room is completely separate from the others. Normally, each entrance can only lead back to the portal Nav created for it. However, Nav can use a master key to connect any room exit to any previously set up portal. This is a pretty broken ability when you think about it. And then he also has his Scream ability. He can open a portal between his hands and wrap it around an opponent. At the command of close, the portal closes, causing anything that was inside of it to be sent to another dimension. Again, Nav is really broken, and it's not really known what are the limitations of this power. Pokel's Nen ability is called Rainbow. He can make various arrows of different colors. The red arrow bursts into flames on contact, and the orange arrows have the highest speed. Unfortunately, we don't know what the other arrows do. That's because we didn't have a chance of seeing them before his untimely demise. Razor can emit his compressed aura into a red glowing sphere which he can throw at his target. It's a pretty good Nen ability when you're playing dodgeball. He also has the 14 Devils. He can create 8 Nen Beasts, numbered from 0 to 7, which he calls Devils. Now in a dodgeball game, 7 of them act as his teammates, and 1 is the referee. Now if 2 of the Devils fuse together, the numbers of their bodies add up, and they become bigger and stronger because of it. Now number 13, the fusion of 6 and 7, even managed to catch Hisoka's ball, which no individual devil was able to do on their own. Now, one of the downsides of this ability is that Razor is unable to draw the full extent of his power when he's channeling out his power into separate entities like this. However, if he dispels the Nen Beast, then he can recover the full output of his power. Blaster's ability is called the Aura Blast. He could shoot fast, powerful bullets from his claws with a high rate of fire. It basically acts like a machine gun. Franklin has the double machine gun. After separating his fingertips, he can expel aura in the form of bullets. Now he could shoot hundreds of devastating bullets without getting tired. Luini has spatial teleportation. Now he can only activate his ability while inside of a room with a single closed door. After fulfilling this condition, he can open a portal from the wall or the floor of the room and enter an alternate dimension. Now he was capable of returning to the sealed room at any point from any location. However, if the original door opened and the room was no longer sealed, the ability would reset and he could never use that room again. It's a pretty good ability for spying on targets and listening in on their conversations. Lynch's ability is called Body and Soul. She asks the target a question and then proceeds to punch them. Now only the 2 of them can hear the conversation. If she does not change the question after the first strike, subsequent blows will result in the target expanding upon the previous answer. So it's a very good ability for interrogation. Terabellum's Nen ability is called Sweet Home. He can displace damage along with the attacking object. So he takes the damage of what his right hand is touching and transfer it to whatever his left hand is touching. But he's got to be touching the object when the damage is taking, otherwise it's not going to work. And if he's not touching something with his left hand while he's taking the damage, then his left hand will receive the damage. It almost seems like he should just keep something in his left hand at all times, that way he's basically invulnerable. We're finally on to enhancers, and we're going to start with none other than Gone Freaks. Now he's got a variety of 3 Jonkin attacks, and each one of them uses a different Nen type. Now again, he's most proficient with enhancement, and the first one is the Rock attack. Now to perform this attack, Gon focuses his aura into a fist, and if he has the time to build up his Ren, the punch will be even more powerful. He then has a transmutation called Scissors. He transmutes his aura into a large blade, which he extends from his outstretched middle finger and pointer fingers, and it's capable of slicing through a chimera ant. And then he has Paper, an emitted attack that fires a ball of aura from his palm. This classifies as an emission attack, and it's probably his weakest of the 3. And then finally, he has his Limitation Transformation. By forming a vow, Gon was able to summon all the power he'll ever have. This transformed his body into his peak age, thus increasing his abilities, his aura outputs, his aura reserves, everything. And it was such a drastic transformation that he was able to defeat Pito with relative ease. That being said, it comes at a great cost, as after he completed his set task, he fell into a coma immediately. His body soon decayed, requiring constant life support. And if it wasn't for Nanaka's intervention, he would have died. Netero has the 100 type Guanyin Bodhisattva. He summons a multi-armed Nen construct behind himself, which takes the form of a gigantic statue of Guanyin. To perform the attack, he claps his hands together in a fluid motion. very reminiscent to a prayer, after which one of the arms on the statue strikes down upon his target in conjunction with Netero's hand motion. And due to his incredible speed, he can carry out this motion in 0.1 seconds. So it literally happens in a flash. The first hand of the Bodhisattva strikes the target with a chop. The third hand attacks with a clap, crushing the target between the two hands. The 99th hand unleashes a barrage of palm strikes with all its arms, resulting in a huge attack that can dig deep into the ground. And then finally, there's the 0 hand. And for Netero, this is a last resort. It focuses every last ounce of Netero's aura in its mouth, before firing an enormous flare of unparalleled destructive power. Because it's such a consuming attack, Netero ages rapidly as a result of it, and his body is completely drained of aura. Palm has 2 abilities, Wink Blue and Black Widow. When Palm looks at someone with her right eye, she registers them in her crystal, and by looking with her left eye, she can see her target. She can keep track of 3 people at the same time, and if she tries to keep track of a 4th person, then the first person who was targeted will be forgotten. Black Widow allows Palm to wrap her entire body in hair. She can form a dress and even a hat with it. Now the outfit itself can change shape according to her emotions, so depending on her objective, she can use it for defense or offense. Komugi's ability is rapidly evolving Gunji playing skills. Her ability allows her to improve in Gunji with rapid succession. She can even defeat Meruem, who is unparalleled in every regard. But it comes with a severe restriction. If she ever loses a game, she has to commit suicide. Now, this one's going to be kind of interesting, because we really don't know what Nobunaga's Nen power is. It states that he's an enhancer leaning towards transmutation, and he definitely possesses a powerful aura considering that he's with the Phantom Troop. But to this day, we still haven't seen his Nen ability play out. Hopefully with the current events on the Black Whale, we'll soon see what his ability entails. Uvo has the Big Bang Impact. He focuses all his aura into his fist, and then uses Enhancement Nen to strengthen his Ko, which then he uses to punch his target. It's not a very complex Nen type, but it's immensely powerful. Goto has the Coin Gatling. He flips coins using a rapid-firing barrage from both of his hands. He can even add an immense amount of spin to the coins as well, allowing them to penetrate the target even if they manage to stop the coins. We saw this in the battle with Hisoka. Even though he was able to catch them with his bungee gum, his arm still twisted up in a knot due to the rotation of the coins. Ilkago has Fleedom, which allows him to turn his tentacles into an air rifle. The flea bullets that he used have impressive range. However, it seems like the lethalness of the bullets are quite tame, and that's probably due to Ilkago's reluctance to kill people. He also has his Living Dead dolls. Basically, he inhabits and takes control of a corpse, manipulating its movements, utilizing its voice, and Nen abilities. It seems as though he resides within the brain of the host. Castro has the Tiger Bite Fist. He enhances the strength of his hands, imitating the claws and fangs of a tiger. He then has his double. Essentially, he creates a doppelganger of himself, and this can be used to attack and confuse the enemy. That being said, it does have a few drawbacks. It requires an immense amount of focus on Castro's part, and he's not able to mimic the effects of blood, dust, or dirt on the double, which means if you see blood on one of them, you know which one's the original. And then he has his true Tiger Bite Fist. Essentially, it's the same as the original attack, but he does it with his double this time. Finks has the Ripper Cyclotron. When he winds up his arm in a clockwise direction, his aura increases in his fist with every rotation. It took 15 rotations to destroy a Chimera Ant's body. That being said, he has a hard time gauging how strong his punches are gonna be. Ramat has the ability to turn the feathers on his arms into sharp blades. He also developed a healing factor that allowed him to recover from wounds that were thought to be fatal. And with that, we're finally on to manipulation. And the first one we got up on the docket is Illumi. He's got a wide variety of skills, one of which includes body alteration. He uses needles to alter the shape of his own body and skin color. He used this in the first arc of the series to fool Killua. That being said, the transformation is quite painful. He can even do this transformation without the needles, but he can only maintain it for about 5 hours. He then has his hypnotic spell. By placing a needle into a target's brain, he's able to condition them by following some orders. In the case of Killua, the activation triggered a crushing fear, and anytime he thought he was going to lose a battle, he had that instinct to immediately run away. Now the beauty about this ability is that it's quite subtle. Killua didn't even notice that he was being manipulated. He thought it was his own internal fear for the longest time. Next up is Corpse Control. By piercing someone's head with a needle, he can manipulate one or more deceased individuals, and they can perform complex activities such as speaking, driving, walking around, and fighting. And it's very similar to Needle People, in which he can imbue aura into a large set of people and give them orders. The recipient of the needle loses all sense of self, and follows all of Illumi's orders without any resistance. Coluto has surveillance paper dolls. By attaching a piece of confetti to a person's body and creating a paper doll of that person, Coluto is able to hear anything being said within the vicinity of that person. Thus, he's very skilled at intel, but then he's also got some offensive abilities as well, that being the dance of the serpent's bite. He moves his fan in graceful movements, lifting up the paper into the air and throwing them at his opponent from multiple angles. And he can even amass them in the shape of a swirling stream reminiscent of a serpent, and it can be used with great effectiveness to tear apart the body of anyone that he's fighting against. Shoot has imprint conversion. He can turn pocket-sized three-dimensional objects into imprints into his hand, and he can also return them to normal size as well without any damage. He then has disembodied hands. He can conjure 3 disembodied hands, which he then controls with manipulation. He can coat them with aura and utilize them as projectiles, but they can also serve as diversions to close in on the opponent to activate Hotel Rafflesia. Now, through physical contact, Shoot can rob a target of a specific body part, and it corresponds to the area of impact. He then shrinks said body part and teleports it into a birdcage. As a result, the affected body parts is replaced by a dark mist. Now, the opponent feels no pain because of this, but it can throw their mind into disarray and cause them to panic. It's a very effective strategy for creating blind spots in the opponent, thus allowing him to sneak up and attack them. Shellnark has the Black Voice. After sticking a special antenna into his target, usually via the back of the neck, he gains the ability to control their mind and their actions. He basically acts like a puppeteer. Now, he can control them manually, or he could set them to autopilot, forcing them to follow orders without his direct intervention. And then he's got autopilot mode. By sticking an antenna into himself, Shellnark's body could go into autopilot mode and gain immense aura. This results in a tremendous boost in his speed and strength. As a downside, once he enters this mode, he can't leave it until his mission is complete. Another downside is that when he leaves the mode, he experiences intense muscle pain afterwards, and he's completely unaware of what he did while in the mode. Morel has Deep Purple, which is a combination of emission, manipulation, and transmutation. He can use his aura to make Nen Beast out of smoke. With the aid of his giant pipe, he produces copious amounts of smoke, which he can then shape into countless constructs, such as ropes, grass, horses, rafts, rabbits, dolls. He can even replicate himself if he wants to. And he can even change the color of the smoke to make the objects seem more realistic. It's a very versatile and flexible Nen ability. He can create a maximum of 216 dolls, but if he compresses that amount to 50, then they become much more complex and stronger. He also has his Smoky Jail. Basically, he encases himself and his opponent into an impenetrable barrier made out of his smoke. And the barrier is unbreakable. You can't get in from the inside or the outside unless Morel decides to dispel it. The only way to get out is if you converted yourself to tiny little particles and sort of seeped right through. And this is exactly what Poof was trying to accomplish during the Chimera Ant arc. Now, these are some great abilities that have a lot of flexibility and versatility. That being said, they're basically useless unless he's got his pipe. So if someone steals his pipe, he is very limited in what he can do. Speaking of Poof, he has quite a few abilities. With his cocoon, he can bestow Nen abilities onto others. And when he uses his cocoon on humans, it has the additional effect of turning them into Chimera Ant hybrids. And with this ability, he was able to turn Palm into an experimental soldier. He then has his spiritual message. He uses his scales to analyze the blend of 30 emotional patterns in a person. And through them, he can formulate conjectures about what they're thinking. So in this sense, he's basically a mind reader. They also have a hypnotic effect to anyone who breathes them. He then has his Beelzebub, in which he can divide his body into miniature segments of himself. And he can determine what size he wants to divide his body into. The clones can be used for a quick escape, or they can be used to spy on others. That being said, the more he splits himself off, the weaker the original body becomes. And then finally, he has the body reconstruction. Essentially, he could split his body at the cellular level, and in this way, he can reconstruct his face, physique, and even his voice. This allowed him to impersonate Kamugi when he made that phone call to Pito. Panzu has bee manipulation, and this one's pretty self-explanatory. She can use bees for her own devices. In the manga, we saw her write a message with her blood and ordered her bees to deliver the message to the first hunter that they came into contact with. And then we got Miloki. Yeah, I'm sure he's got some Nen abilities, but, he just has yet to display it. He's just waiting for that perfect moment. We then have Zakuro. He's one of the people that's working for Hinrig in the current arc. Now he can manipulate his blood to his own will, so he needs an open wound to fight with using this ability. But because of that, he's kind of in a tenuous situation. He has to carry an IV bag around with him at all times, just so that he doesn't lose enough blood. And his blood can take on a life of its own, even having eyes when searching out things. And it seems like the aura can remain within the blood for about 30 to 40 minutes, after which time it runs out and it's useless at that point. But he can recall the blood before that time runs out. Zazan has the Queen Shot. By stinging a human, Zazan can transform them into a grotesque human-animal hybrid, who becomes utterly loyal to her. I mean, just as a brief aside, I feel like they could have called this Simp Shot instead. Now, should the target be too weak, the metamorphosis will kill her. The transformation is irreversible, but her control over the target's mind remains until they meet their death. And then she's got her Monster Queen form, and this would be a last resort for her. She pulls out her stinger and transforms into a grotesque, crocodile-like monster, and it seems like all her abilities increase. Now she becomes very muscular in this form, yet at the same time she still remains fast. Now we're on to a very special group, as it were, the Specialist. Now like we talked about, Kurapika is technically a specialist as well. Even though he's a conjurer, when he uses Emperor's Time, he becomes a specialist. But we already talked about him, so let's move on to the next one. Crollo has Skill Hunter. He can steal the Nen abilities of others to use as his own through a conjured book known as Bandit's Secret, after which the victim can no longer use their Nen ability. But to steal said Nen ability, it comes with some strict conditions. 1, Crollo must witness the Nen ability with his own eyes. 2, he must ask questions about Nen and be answered by the victim. 3, his victim's palm must touch the handprint on the cover of the book. And 4, the previous 3 steps must be completed within 1 hour. Now to use the stolen ability, Crollo must first conjure Bandit's Secret and turn to the page of the desired ability. The book must then remain open in his right hand, allowing him to use only one ability at a time. Now if the original owner of the ability dies, the ability disappears from the book as well. Now if the original owner of the ability dies, the ability vanishes from the book. But if there's postmortem Nen involved, Crollo can still utilize it. He then has Double Face. When the stolen ability requires the usage of 2 hands, Crollo conjures Bookmark Theme to be able to use that ability. This bookmark allows Crollo to maintain access to any ability on the page it is placed upon, even if the book is closed and he's not touching it. So basically, it acts like a loophole for him. And with this ability active, he can use both hands in combat. Furthermore, if he keeps the book open and has his hand on one of the pages and his bookmark on another page, he's capable of utilizing 2 stolen abilities at the same time. Now we won't go over stolen abilities of other Nen users that we know about, since that would be redundant. We'll just talk about the ones that we don't know about the original owners. The first one is Indoor Fish. They are Nen beasts that can survive in a completely sealed room. Now while the victim is being eaten by the fish, they do not feel pain or bleed. But when the fish disappear, the effects of the wounds manifest, most likely resulting in the death of the victim. Fun cloth can increase and decrease in size according to the user's will. Whatever is covered in the cloth, even an object as large as a car, decreases in size until it fits in the palm of one's hand. The user then can return it to its original size by letting it out of the bag. Even people can be shrunken down to very small sizes with this ability. Teleportation allows Crollo to teleport a person from one place to another, and he can do this without their consent. Sun and Moon produce 2 symbols on the backs of Crollo's hands. By touching the intended target, he can mark them with a different symbol depending on which one he used. Now when the 2 marks touch each other, they trigger an explosion. The marks can be created instantaneously, but to reach their full power, Crollo needs to touch the target for 3 to 5 seconds. Now once the marks are affixed, they will remain until they explode, even if Crollo closes the book. Order Stamp is a stamp that when affixed to a puppet, allows its user to control it after giving a vocal command. Now, the ability is capable of controlling a large number of puppets, but the orders cannot be too complex. This was used against Hisoka during their fights at Heaven's Arena. Now, the commands are not absolute. If he gives a command that goes against the person's beliefs, then said person will just simply ignore it. But if he uses phrases like break instead of kill, he can bypass the puppet's will. And then finally, we got Convert Hands. 2 marks appear on the palms of Chrollo's hands, a black arrow pointing up inside an empty circle on the right, and a white arrow pointing down inside a circle on the left. Touching a target with his right hand causes them to take on Chrollo's likeness, while touching them with his left hand causes Chrollo to take on the target's likeness. If he touches a target with both hands, the two of them instantly switch forms. It basically allows him to blend in with a crowd at a moment's notice. Again, he used this against Hisoka in their fight together, in which he used mobs of people to chase after him and explode him. It was a pretty ingenious strategy when you think about it, and Togashi's ability to create this complex, convoluted fight is simply breathtaking. It was absolutely amazing to read. Now, Aluka herself doesn't have any Nen or Nen abilities. She basically acts as a medium for Nanaka, and Nanaka is able to grant wishes. Now, Nanaka makes requests, and if you want a big wish, the requests are going to be quite difficult to achieve. And if you fail to fulfill her request, you could eventually die. Now, even though you can technically wish for anything, there are severe consequences for each wish. That being said, if you're not being greedy, if you just ask for her to heal someone, it seems like there's no consequences. As was seen when Killua asked Nanaka to heal Gon. Dr. Blythe is a giant conjured doll, and it's used to treat wounds through a surgical fashion. It was used to treat Kamugi's mortal wound to the stomach in less than an hour. Now, Dr. Blythe cannot move from where it's summoned, and being that it's connected to Pito's tail, limits the movement radius to about 20 meters. She also has puppeteering. She can attach a clown-esque puppeteer to a target to exercise complete control over them. Now, it's not known how many bodies she can puppeteer at a time, but we know that it's higher than 50. That being said, the puppets are lower quality than Morel's. And then finally, we have Terpsichore. Terpsichore takes the form of a monstrous ballerina, with strings connecting its fingertips to Pito's body like a marionette. Now, even though Pito's head was crushed by Gon in their battle, the ability remained active out of loyalty for the king. In fact, it became stronger after death. And as we've learned, post-mortem Nen seems to be stronger than regular Nen. When Tsuridna closes his eyes and activates his Zetsu, he receives a vision, which he refers to as precognition or a dream. And in said vision, he gets to see the following 10 seconds that are going to play out. Now for him, the vision is instantaneous. No time passes in the present timeline. He calls it an ephemeral 10 seconds. Basically, it's like a parallel universe. So the vision of the 10 seconds in the future that he sees will play out in real time, and everyone will see Tsuridna's actions as it played out in those 10 seconds. However, he can change his actions based upon what happened in that previous timeline. So, for example, when Theta shot him in the head, he could react to that and avoid the bullet. The one limitation to this ability is that he needs to enter a state of Zetsu, but if he could master that, he could literally become unstoppable. Paku has psychometry. She can read the memories of any person that she is in physical contact with. Attempting to subvert her by creating false memories does not work, as she can extract the target's purest memories. And then she's got the memory bomb. She can implant memories, including her own, by shooting them into another person's head. She does this using a revolver and conjuring bullets called memory bombs. Neon has the lovely Ghostwriter. She predicts the future through quatrains that she writes down unconsciously. The quote-unquote lovely Ghostwriter is a Nen beast that manipulates Neon's arms to automatically write her poems. Now the target must handwrite his name, full date of birth, and blood type on a piece of paper. And it's upon this piece of paper in which she writes her poem. Hina is an exorcist. Now, when she removes the Nen-imposed curse, the aura is ultimately stored in her belly, giving her the appearance that she's a pregnant woman. And the stronger the ability that she gets rid of, the larger the inflation. And it's also mentioned that she can't move very much after using the ability. Benolt has scissor hands. By cutting his target's hair with his favorite scissors and eating said hair, Benolt can learn any physique-related information about his opponent. This is how he was able to figure out Biscuit's true age. And when you think about it, this is a pretty useless ability. I mean, this is just god-awful. Leol has Rental Pod. It's an ability that allows him to temporarily borrow the Nen abilities of another person. But he's got to fulfill 2 conditions. First, he must know the name of the ability or have seen it being used before. And second, he must do the owner of the ability a favor, and the owner has to confirm the acceptance of the debt with a question. Something to the effect of, "You owe me, alright?" Now, if the owner of the ability dies, their information is automatically erased from the machine, and subsequently, the ability can no longer be used. Meloron has Perfect Plan and God's Accomplice. Basically the same thing with one little caveat. When he holds his breath, he becomes invisible. In fact, you can't see, hear, smell, or touch him. And he can also extend the effects to someone else. If he's physically touching someone, they also can't be detected. Now, objects that leave the person that he's touching, such as blood, can be seen. Now, for example, when he was touching Morel and Morel was bleeding, Yopi could see that blood. He could see the trail. Renko is a relatively new character within the HunterxHunter universe. She has the power to repair damaged human corpses by embalming them. She told Machi that this was quote-unquote a special ability. Now, she could just be referring to the fact that it's a Nen ability, or it could be a specialization type. We're not really sure. And with that, we're finally on to Transmuters. And we're going to start off with the most iconic Transmuter himself, Hisoka. Bungee gum allows him to make his aura sticky and elastic. Now, according to some, although this is not confirmed, it has the properties of both rubber and gum. I wish Togashi gave us more of a concrete answer. This is a very versatile skill. He can activate it through his fingers, hands, and even feet. He can give it a command to contract at will, and it snaps back with great force. He can use it to pull opponents towards him, or use it to toss coins back at Godo. He can also emit it to restrain individuals as powerful as Machi. By using it on his feet, he can run up walls and even on ceilings as well. And then he has the texture surprise. He can apply his aura to any smooth, flat surface such as paper or cloth. And because of this, he can manifest imagery on it to change its appearance. He could literally change the wording on a piece of paper if he wanted to. He can also use it to change the appearance of his skin. Like after his battle with Krollo, he made his body look like it was brand new once again. Killua has a wide variety of abilities. The first one is Lightning Palm. He can electrocute his opponent by touching them with both palms of his hands. Thunderbolt is performed when he leaps into the air above the opponent and projects a bolt of lightning through his fingertips. This allows him to paralyze his opponent for a few moments, causing them immense pain. He then has his Godspeed, which comes in two variations. The first of which is Whirlwind. This allows him to react automatically to external stimuli. He programs his aura to send an electrical signal to his muscles, so as to be instantaneous. And the second application of Godspeed is Speed of Lightning. This allows Killua to remain conscious while using it. As a result, his running speed and jumping ability increase dramatically. Hence, he can cover extraordinary distances in a very short amount of time. Now, according to some math done online, while using Speed of Lightning, he can move at about 149 miles per hour, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Phaeton has Pain Packer. After taking damage and becoming enraged, he conjures a suit of armor that protects him from the effects of all ensuing techniques. He then has his Rising Sun. He transmutes his aura into a scorching heat, and the power depends on the pain and injuries that was inflicted upon him in the battle. The ability is manifested by emitting a ball of aura into the air, which then transforms into a miniature sun that burns the victim to death. Again, the more damage that he suffered, the hotter and brighter the sun is. Machi has Nen Stitches. She's capable of creating stitches that can sew up wounds, and she can even completely reattach severed limbs in a very short amount of time. Although not confirmed, we can assume that the stitches have some sort of regenerative properties, possibly revitalizing and reinvigorating the cells. And then she has her Nen Threads. She transmutes her aura into threads, thus using it to manipulate her target like a puppeteer. She can even make elaborate traps to capture, strangle, or cut her enemies to shreds. Biscuit has Magical Spa Services. She summons a Nen Beast masseuse called Cookie, who uses different massaging techniques to relieve fatigue and restore vitality. It can even burn off excess fats and cure arthritis. Then there's the Piano Massage. Now with this massage, 30 minutes of sleep is equivalent to 8 hours of sleep. In addition to relieving physical and mental fatigue, it also accelerates the restoration of aura. Now through this ability, Gon and Killua were able to complete a year's worth of training in just 1 month. And then finally she has her Body Transformation. Biscuit is capable of changing her appearance to look much younger and far less muscular. That being said, it reduces her physical capabilities. Now, the body transformation serves two purposes. One, she does it for her own vanity, she thinks she looks more aesthetically pleasing. And two, it's a means for concealing her true power. Yopi's primary ability allows him to control any part of his anatomy with free range. He can sprout additional arms and use them like tentacles. Under extreme mental stress, his body engorges and swells up as the rage increases, and he can unleash that power into a destructive explosion, capable of leaving a good-sized crater. Not only that, the blast results in great pleasure from Yopi's part. And then finally, we got the Rage Incarnate. This is where he transforms his body into a centaur-like creature. His right arm morphs into a powerful scythe, and then on his left arm, he's got a large amoebic sac, and this is used to control his rage. Now by entering this state, he becomes faster and stronger. Now Hanzo can project a double of himself which can phase through matter and hover in the air. His consciousness leaves his body while he uses this ability. Now if he attempts to talk to his body or touch it, it will cause the astral projection to be dispelled. Now this is a very useful ability. He can use it to knock out security guards and strangle a Nen user to death. We're then going to move on to our last category, and that's going to be unknown Nen types. Now, we know that these Nen users have abilities. Either we've seen them before or we're still in the dark. That being said, based on the current information that we have, it's hard for us to determine what classification of Nen they have. And the first one we got up here is Jing. Now, Jing has yet to reveal his full Nen abilities. That being said, even though he hasn't revealed his true Nen abilities, he has the ability to copy other people's Nen abilities. After getting punched in the face by Leorio's remote punch, he was able to mimic it. He then used this ability to create ultrasonic waves. He released his aura through pulses in a wall, allowing him to detect people on the other side. Now obviously Leorio would use this for medical reasons, but Jing was able to analyze Leorio's remote punch and used it for offensive measures. And then finally he's got the phasing bullets. He lays his hands on a surface, and then he can shoot projectile aura through the surface itself without getting interrupted. Morena has contagion. Through her saliva, her, as member 0, can infect up to 22 people with her ability. When a member of the group subsequently kills someone, they level up, increasing their aura amount and output. Upon reaching level 20, they will manifest a unique ability. And at level 100, they also become a member 0, and can thusly use the contagion to create their own community. Now it's hard to say what type of Nen this falls under. It seems like manipulation, but the people have full autonomy over their decisions. So possibly it's specialization? It's hard to say. Mizai Stum has cross game. He uses 3 cards to restrict a person's actions. The blue card will admit the person to a courtroom. The yellow card will put them under his control, and the red card will dismiss them. When Mizai uses the yellow card, he shows it to the target. And if the target ignores his warning, he flips the card over, stating restraint. The target is thusly encased in a matrix that prevents them from moving, although they're able to still speak normally. Camilla has Cat's Name. It's a counteractive ability that activates after her death. Now upon dying, a huge cat-like Nen beast appears behind the killer. It squishes them with its paws and extracts their life force. The life energy is then transferred to the tip of the Nen beast's tail. The life energy is then transferred to the tip of the Nen beast's tail, which turns white and begins to glow. It then pours the essence into Camilla's mouth, healing her injuries and completely resurrecting her. The ability itself relies on post-mortem Nen to boost its power, which seems like it makes Camilla virtually impossible to kill. Now when a Nen user swears fealty to Benjamin, and they die, the first prince receives their Nen ability. Now for him to inherit the ability, the Nen user must have graduated from the Kaken Royal Military Academy, and be part of Benjamin's private army. The ability manifests on the palm of his right hand as a star. Now he's got 4 stars on his hand, so it's not known whether or not he can have more than 4 abilities at a time. But that would seem to be a reasonable conclusion. Now he inherited Air Blow from Vincent. Vincent attempted to activate it through his left palm in order to break the guard of a Nen user. He then has Secret Window. This allows him to create 3 owl-shaped constructs referred to as birds. One of them can eavesdrop on conversations despite barriers. Another one can be applied directly to the target through physical contact. It's a great ability for capturing intel. And then finally, he has Cold Sept. This allows the user to procure another Nen user's ability. It's initiated by joining your hands in front of yourself, generating a flash of light, then forming a rectangle with the thumbs and index fingers. After completing all the preparations, the target's ability can be turned into a card, which presumably can be used at the user's own discretion. Sayu's weapon of choice is a conjured staff. He can change its length at will depending on what he wants to use it for. He then also has an ability called 3 Monkeys. Now, if their attacks are successful, they rob the opponent of sight, hearing, and speech. And once they're weakened, he can finish them off with his staff. It seems like this is probably another conjuration, but we're not sure at the moment. Jill has Snake Arm. It allows her to transform her arm into a snake. The snake has 4 hearts on its head, with one being larger than the other 3. And it also has a ribbon tied around its neck. We don't really know much else about it. Cluck's abilities have yet to be demonstrated in full, but she is capable of controlling pigeons, so it seems like it's some sort of bird manipulation, possibly similar to Ponzu's Nen ability. Pike's ability allows him to instantaneously shoot a web thick and sticky, which allows him to completely immobilize his target. The web is extremely durable and cannot even be broken by one of the strongest chimera ants, Bihorn. Rihan has Predator. Once he's selected a target, a predator begins to grow inside of his body. Now, the more accurate his understanding of the target's ability, the better the predator will be to counter it. And when he's gathered enough information, he focuses his aura between his hands and breathes it out. Now, despite being conjured, the predator was invisible to non-Nen users in the room. Now, since it draws its strength from the accuracy of his analysis, it's not really good against simple enhancement or emission attacks. Now, this last one is a little bit of a mystery. We don't know who the user is of Silent Majority. All we know is that the user employs a marionette doll that can only be seen by them and someone else who's being possessed. Now, if the marionette is deactivated without killing anyone, the curse will rebound and affect the user. Now, 4 snakes with several mouths across the bodies are conjured up and make numerous holes in the target, draining them of all their blood. With 4 snakes being employed at the same time, they can drain a target of all their blood within 11 seconds. Now, it seems like the snakes are a conjured ability, but Kurapika also speculated that some manipulation was involved as well. And this is definitely one of the biggest ongoing mysteries within the current arc. There's some speculation as to who is Silent Majority, but it's hard to tell. But anyway, that's my list of Nen users within the HunterxHunter universe. I know I didn't have time to cover them all, but I felt like this was a pretty comprehensive list of all the major, moderate, and some of the minor Nen users. But thanks for listening, guys, and I'll catch you on the flip side.